Hey everybody, and welcome to the project overview for the procedural foliage placement tool. In this video, we're going to cover the project structure once you open it in Unreal, and we're going to give you a very brief description of all of the different blueprints that are included in the project. We're not going to go into detail. This is just a very high-level overview to get you situated, what different folders there are, and where you can find all of the relevant details. So without further ado, download the project from the marketplace, and let's go ahead and jump over to Unreal. Now, if if you downloaded the project, you probably had to add it to your own individual project. So exactly what you see here is the showcase level opened, but you should see that you have a folder called PFT, that stands for the Procedural Foliage Tool. And underneath, you'll see that there are several different folders. Obviously, Blueprints is really where all of the tools are. The maps contain the level assets, which is just a showcase of all of the different assets that are included in the template, and the level showcase, which you're seeing here. This is the one that I would recommend even before going through the series. If you just want to play the level, it'll actually guide you through some of the different features that you find when you bought the project, right? It'll have little pop-ups that explain to you what you're seeing as you're walking around. It'll give you a little tour. So if you haven't done that, I would recommend for you to pause this video and just go ahead and do that. It'll give you a very quick refresher before you come back and we go over some of the details. Obviously, materials, meshes, and textures is exactly what it sounds like, right? All of the materials used for all of the assets that are included, as well as some of the meshes and the textures that are used. By and large, you don't really have to mess around with this unless you want to obviously change some of the materials, which we'll go over the next video. If you open the blueprints folder, you're going to see that we have an animations folder, and all of the animations that are here for the UE4 mannequin are here, nothing else. The enums folder has two enumerations. These are used for the different blueprint tools. Unless you're specifically trying to add or modify the tools, I will not touch this folder. Don't mess around with this one. Environment has different blueprints that help you shape your landscape or your environment. The BP Align Landscape is a nifty little tool that helps you flatten the landscape at a very precise degree. You actually set the volume area, it's a rectangle, and it uses a landscape spline to actually flatten the area. We're going to be using that later on in the series to create a little area in our landscape so we can populate it with trees and really see what's going on. BP River, this is the river tool that you're seeing here, and we're going to go over that in a separate video, how to do that. VP Simple Path, you are seeing it right here again, is a spline-based pathing tool. And basically, it allows you to create a little path, and the path carves the landscape as it goes, or it can align to the landscape. BP Translucent Water, you're not really seeing it here, but I've included it because it's really convenient. You are seeing it in the assets level. This is just used for if you want to have lakes, for example, or even a little ocean. Going down, you have a particles folder, and this is just a Firefly's particle system, and you're going to see that in one of the custom actors that I've included. This is just a very simple particle system. You can see it right here. It just simulates fireflies, right? And this is again used in one of the included actors. PFT_spawner, this is really where the main tools are, the spawning tools. You have this BPHIM actor. This is just a generic class that is used to spawn all of the hierarchical instance static meshes in your level. By and large, you don't really have to touch this. This is just the generic class. You have a BP no spawn zone. You're gonna use this to specify a specific area in your map where you do not want anything spawned, right? So when the main foliage placement tool checks an area, if there is a no spawn zone, it will not spawn anything, right? So use this if you want to have like a little clearing in a forest or in a level. Anything that is inside this volume will basically be exempt from the spawning area. Then you have the VP Procedural Foliage Placement tool. This is really the main tool. There's a lot of different options here, so this is going to be really the biggest video down the line in the series. Then you have BP spawn zone. This is used in one of the spawning modes here. When you spawn foliage, one of the spawn methods is to spawn the foliage only on the specified spawning zones. So if you want to have specific control of where your trees spawn, you can drag out as many of the spawn zones as you like in your level and then add them to the tool, and those are the only places where the trees are actually going to spawn. And then you have this little utility called BP toggle entity types, and this is a way of converting between individual actors and instant static meshes, right? And you'll see why I do that, right? The best workflow that I found the most efficient is to spawn your foliage first as individual actors, because that way you have control over the placement and transform of every individual piece of foliage. And then once you're happy, you can convert them to instant static meshes, right? But what happens once they're converted? If you ever want to go back and make any changes, this tool will allow you to convert back those to individual actors, so you can then go ahead and make your changes. And that happens as you're working in your level. Maybe you spawn all your trees, you make the changes, you convert them, and maybe down the line you realize, you know what, there are a couple of trees that I wanted to change, right? At that point, you will use this tool, convert them back, make your changes, and then turn them back into instant static meshes. Then there's the showcase folder. These blueprints are just specifically made for the showcase level that you're seeing here. Obviously, you're free to use them, but they're not really part or related to the spawner. This is just something that I did to make sure that when you're going through your showcase level, that gives you a nice little experience. So the BP changing tree, again, this is the example blueprint actor class that I'm using in the showcase level. It's just a tree with a dynamic instance of a material. When you overlap a sphere, it'll actually gradually change the material from this really opaque red to a much brighter red. This is a widget that displays the instructions here in the showcase level. This is the actual actor that you're seeing right here. When you overlap this actor, it'll go ahead and show the instructions on the screen. And then VP teleport, there's only seeing one instance here towards the end, and it basically teleports the player from the end of the path to the very top here, so the player can actually see all of the different spawn method that you kind of walked around here, but gives you the chance to actually see everything from above. Structs, this is a group of structures that again are used by all of the different tools. In here, I would highly recommend you do not mess with these unless you know exactly what you're doing, right? All of the tools heavily depend on these structs, right? So only open them and change them if you know that there's something specific that you want to change, right? Otherwise, I would say that leave the structs folder alone and the enums folder alone. These are just there to make sure that all of the other tools work as intended. And then utilities, we'll go over this in the last video. There's a actor component that basically gives you the actor bounds. And why would you care for that? If you have a specific instant static mesh or static mesh actor rather, you can find the bounds just by hovering your mouse over in the content browser. But if you have a more complex blueprint that has several meshes and you can't really figure out what the bounds are, you add this little component and it'll just give you what the bounds are, right? Super convenient, super simple, and I'll show you how to do that when we get there in the video. Then you have a generic spline actor, and again, this is super simple. It's just an actor blueprint with a spline component. But the reason I add this is because one of the really cool spawning methods that you'll see later is you can spawn your foliage along a spline, right? And obviously the splines that I'm including are the river, which is a spline actor, and the path. But it can be anything with a spline, right? So if you just want to have a really cool pattern in your level for whatever reason without using these two blueprints, you can just use this generic actor and then it'll just spawn it through that spline. And then you have this little height helper, and you'll see why this is important. The auto material that you see here, you can see there's some snow, some grass, and some sand. Basically blends these different layers by height, and that height is an actual absolute value, right? So if you ever wanted to know specifically, okay, well, I want to spawn these palm trees starting where the sand starts, or a specific height, how do you know the specific height, right? So you can use this little helper and really quickly decide what height, where is what height, right? It's kind of hard to explain, but it's super simple. Once we get there, you'll see why this is really handy. And that's pretty much it, right? We covered the blueprints, the maps, and again, materials, meshes, and textures is exactly what it sounds like, so I'm not going to spend too much time here. So that's it. In the next video, we're actually going to start a brand new level, and we're going to import our height map to create this exact same little map, and we're going to take a look at the auto material that's included. Okay? Thank you guys so much, and I'll see you in the next video.